It was a regular day at the local high school. Jacob was with among some of his friends talking about the prom that was taking place within another week. Most of his friends were already taking their girlfriends as their date to the prom. But Jacob, though, he was single at the time, and he hadn't even been asked or had asked any girl to go with to the prom. Even some of his best friends, like Tom, had asked him if he was interested to ask some girl out, because, as from what he knew, there weren't many girls left to be asked though. Even though Tom had a point, but Jacob said, "Well, I'm not so certain I won't have to find a date for the prom yet, though. I mean, I don't know which girl to ask." During that lunch break, Jacob and Tom were sitting at the table by themselves when a girl by the name Jenny walks up to them. Jenny was known to the school to be a very energetic girl, very popular among the guys and even among the girls. She had a lot of friends. But even though she was so popular, she was single. Even though after Tom had just left the table when Jenny walks up to Jacob, she asked Jacob if they could talk for a moment, and he said sure, and she sits down and she asks him if he had found a girl to go for as a date for the prom yet. Despite that the prom was only about a week away, even though the most of the girls or had already found a boy to go as a date, but some girls prefer to go as with their friends. But but Jacob though still hasn't even found or even had been thinking of but just going by himself. Despite this, since Jenny was one of the popular girls, even himself was quite popular among the guys and girls in school, she asked him though if Yanni was interested or had asked anyone else to be on the date for the prom, but he said no, and she then asked if he maybe wanted to go with her as her date to the prom. Even though that Jacob wasn't much interested in Jenny, because most of the times when she had asked a guy out, they usually dated for a couple of weeks or maybe a couple of months, but they always end up then breaking apart or break up or something like that. But Jenny was, even though that she was seemed to be a cute girl in her late late teens, like 16, 17, but Jacob wasn't even interested in her. And from what he could understand from her, what she means, that not only to be her date, but even to be her boyfriend. But Jacob said that he will think about it first, because it still is a week away, and he needs some time to think about it. And she understood, and as she left, he was still sitting there only for another couple of more minutes and thinking about the answer. But in his mind, he had already thought about the answer, and that would be no. But he decided to tell her that maybe in a couple of days, as he said he wanted to have some time to think. So only about on Friday, only about a couple of days later, just before the school was ended, Jenny walks up to Jacob and asks him if he had thought about her question if to be as her date for the prom. But he said, "Yes, I have been thinking, and I'm sorry, but I would have to say no." This was actually very surprising because Jenny had hoped that he would say yes, but that when he said no, she was devastated. But even though she tried to act calmly, but she was the more opposite. Because this took place just after school was ended when Jacob was waiting for the school bus to arrive, when she literally screamed. "You said no to me? I am the most prettiest girl in school, and you dare not to even go with me as my date?" Even despite all the students around him just staring at him, even though that she was causing the scene. But Jacob stood his ground and said, "No, I'm not going out taking you to the prom as your date." Even though when she tried to argue with him, trying to scream once again, that saying, "You're a bad guy, Dad." Well, Jenny, it is my choice if I want to go with you as my date or not. You can't literally force me to be your date. After that, he turned around and walked to the school bus, and Jenny stood there, silent. She was still furious. But that was the only point in her life when Jacob had seen her so furious. He has never seen her that angry at any point. But to him though, that didn't bother him because it was as it was Friday and it was weekend. He had planned to spend his weekend just to be relaxing, which he did. That weekend, he spent most time talking to some of his friends like Tom and even played some games with them. Since the prom was going to take place about the next Friday, about from a weekend from now, even then when the rest of the week came, everyone at the school was talking about the prom, and there was the scene that happened the last Friday when Jenny screamed at Jacob. But even some of the people from the school asked him about it, what he thought about it, but he said it is her problem. That is up to her to decide for, but I can't say I not wasn't even interested in her. And that was something Jacob was honest about. And the Friday came and the prom happened. There were a lot of guys that were went to their old girlfriends to the prom and everything. And when Daniel's father dropped him off at school, he said goodbye and went inside, where he met Tom and some other friends, John and Nick, or Mike. There were a lot of girls that he talked to, but when he was standing by this table where they had snacks and drinks, he felt a tap on his back. When he turned around, it was his friend Sarah. Sarah and Jacob had been childhood friends. They literally grew up almost near the same street together for many years, and he actually looked up to her, despite she was only maybe a couple of months older than himself. He asked her how she has been since they haven't even been able to see each other for at least a couple of days, since she has a lot of schoolwork to take care of, and he has the same. And she said that she had been a little bit busy. He then asked her who she took as a date to the prom. Since she was a very cute girl, and even some guys even liked her, but she said that she went to prom with some of her friends. And then they were actually using small talk, and even by the corner of his eyes, he could see that one girl was staring at him, and from across the room. It was in fact Jenny. Jenny was standing by the wall across the side of the room, staring at him like she was just staring. But then suddenly the DJ announced it's going to be the first dance running the next moment. So Jacob, since he didn't have any date with him, or that Sarah didn't have a date, he then asked her if she maybe wanted to dance with him, even just as a friend, and she accepted that invitation for that. And as the music started, they both of them went up to the dance floor and started dancing together, and they're just having a good time. But after a few times, from time to time, when he was dancing with Sarah, with Sarah, he could make some scenes at the same wall. Jenny hasn't even moved, but as he looked at her, only for sometimes for a brief second, she was glaring at him. It was like, "I hate you so much," look. And even though he brushed it off and didn't think much about it because Despite she was maybe as upset about him that he didn't refuse to be her date, but he didn't think about she would do anything to be in such serious afterwards. So after the dance was over, Sarah thanked him for the dance and she walked back to her friends and Jacob went back to some of his friends and after that he went to the refreshments area when he suddenly felt another tap on his back. He thought maybe one of his friends or maybe Sarah came back to talk to him some more, but when he turned around, it wasn't either his friends or even Sarah. It was in fact Jenny. She still had that look. I hate you so much kind of look. She just glared at him for only a brief few seconds before she said, I thought you didn't want to have a date for the prom. So you didn't ask, said no to me, but you can go with her? And I said, pointed at Sarah, but Sarah didn't see her, or even heard her because of the music. No, Jenny, Sarah isn't my date. She went here with some of her friends. I went here on my own. But Jenny didn't even believe. I don't believe you. You're here as her date. Admit it. You are dating her. No, Jenny. She went here with her friends, said Jacob from a strong tone. But she still didn't even believe it. He then finished his drink and left, went to go to the bathroom. As he was walking in the hallway, he could still hear the sound of the music in the background as further it went. Otherwise from that, it was silent in the hallway. As he went after he left the restroom, though, he was way back to the prom when he heard some footsteps behind him. Maybe it was another student has been in the bathroom at the same time. Maybe it was a girl or something. But as he turned around, it was in fact Jenny. She had been a different look in her face. Her face was red as almost like fire. She was so furious. She had been crying. She was like screaming, but nothing came out. Only said, I hate you. If I can't date you, no one can date you. And then suddenly he felt a some feeling in his abdomen. And as I looked down, she had stabbed him with a knife. She had somehow smuggled in a small blade, like a kitchen knife or something, and stabbed him twice before she said, now anyone can't date you. And then she turned around and just walked away slowly without saying a word. Jacob was in such shock. At first, even it was felt like an eternity, but it was only a few seconds. First, he couldn't even believe that Jenny, of all people that he knew, would just walk up to him and stab him twice and just walk away as nothing had happened. And Jacob, even despite knowing he was stabbed, he slowly turned around and walked back to prom, despite losing a lot of blood on the floor. But as he was standing in the doorway to the prom, he just stood there and looked at nothing. And then suddenly someone screamed, and it was in fact Sarah. As she stood there with her friends and noticed that Jacob was standing in the doorway and just looking, or at least his face was blank. He was just standing there until she saw the red stain on his white tuxedo. He had been stabbed. And that was the moment when she screamed for help. As she screamed, Jacob passed out and he collapsed to the floor, and everyone just stared and started screaming. Someone screamed, "Call for 911!" And Jacob, he didn't wake up. Even the music stopped. Some of the teachers in the area was actually asking, look around, who did it? As they all wondered who could have done it. Sarah, she would actually run up to Jacob, tried to push pressure on the wound so that he didn't lose any more blood. Within the next few minutes, as it felt almost like eternity, all students were talking. Who could have done this? Jacob was such a lovely guy. He hasn't been any no enemies in school. Could it have been a stranger? Other people discussing about this even when after the ambulance had picked up Jacob and left for the hospital. Even despite this, on the way to the hospital, in the ambulance, Jacob's heart stopped twice. He died in the ambulance twice, but managed to come back with some of the medics. Even when he went to the hospital, he had to do some surgery because of the severe injury. Apparently, the knife had hit his liver and it was very, very serious. Even after a couple of days later, when he was stable enough, all his friends back in school were still debating who could have done it. Just after that, the ambulance had left, the police had arrived, and they tried to talk to any students who had been. They actually suspected everyone in the group, all students and staff of the school. But everyone could actually verify they were in the hall during the prom, and no one has even left. Except for one person though, but they didn't know it. Sarah. No, Jenny. Jenny was the one who stabbed Jacob. But as it happened, somehow, just after she had stabbed him, she had snuck around in a different door and snuck in back when Jacob returned. She screamed and acted like she was in terrible shock. And even afterwards, Jacob, even though despite he was in a stable condition, he hasn't even waken up yet. The police really hopes that when he wakes up, he will be able to provide the evidence, or at least the proof, or at least who done it. Even despite that, Jacob didn't even wake up. It took him nearly almost a week before waking up. And when he told the police who was the one who did this, and when the school did find out, even the students, they all could even believe it. Jenny was the one who done it, stabbed him twice at the prom of all places. But she tried to make Skinny say that it wasn't even true, because even after it was happened, where was the weapon that she would been used? Because when they searched in every guy's apart, their girls' purses they had, but no one had any something like even remotely as a stabbing weapon. So what happened to the knife that Jenny used? Well, just before then she came to school, a little bit when turned back to the rest of the prom, she actually had ran up to the school to the dumpsters, hid the weapon underneath, and no one actually didn't believe what had happened. And the weapon was gone, long gone. They were out without the smoking gun. There were no evidence that she was the one who did it because people saw that she was in the room when he came back. Even despite this, the police asked others even those on staff if they had noticed if she was the one who did it, or if she had even left the room. But that was in fact a good thing because one teacher did notice that Jenny actually in fact left the prom room, just only short moments after the Jacob had died. But she actually returned only a few moments later on because it was like she didn't seem to be the girl to be stabbing or even hurting anyone. But when the police then came up, figure was told about the incident that happened about a week earlier at the school, out just outside school, they believed that they had all the evidence what happened. What about Jacob? After all this event that took in place, how did he felt about his emotions for Jenny? Because Jenny and Jacob were were in fact old friends. They had known each other from since the fifth grade. And they were always happy. They were always playing together after school. And but he couldn't even believe that one of his oldest friends who could have done this to him. He felt betrayed, not only because what he done it, but because what he rejected her off her invitation to be her date. He couldn't even believe that she would do this because he only rejected her idea for being her date. He could still not even believe it. But despite this, when she when she was in a lock when she was in jail, she tried to reach out to him, and he actually went to see to talk to her. He would just want to have answers why she did it, and the answer was jealousy. She still believes that Jacob was in fact have been dating Sarah all time. That was the reason why he said no to her when she be her date. But Jacob's still telling her there was not even anything like that. They were just friends. But despite this, she still don't even want to believe him. But he asked her then one question. Why stabbing him? When he could just have been slapped in the face or maybe something else, maybe some bad prank or something, but stabbing? She said if she couldn't even have him for herself, to be his boyfriend, to her be his girlfriend, no other girl would have him. That is the reason. And after that, he said, I can't believe it. And for that, Jenny, I will never want to see or hear from you ever again. If you try to reach out to me ever again, I will ignore you. And in fact, I hope you end up in jail for what you did. Causing me almost my life because of your love for me is the worst anything that you had ever done. I've known you for years and never been anything remotely to this strange acting about what you did. I did care about you, but I wasn't even in love with you. I did. If you had to fall in love with someone else, I would have supported that. But what you did, trying to make me to feel worse for what you did, that has opposite. Jacob said, I cannot even stand to see you anymore. For that, this is the final time I will ever see you. And in fact, even when you get out, I will have a restraining order against you that you will never want to be able to see me ever again. And he left. And that was in fact the one of the last times he ever saw her. The last one time when he was back in court to testify what happened. And despite what happened, she was ended up in jail for 25 to life. And she in fact got a life without parole. And that was something Jacob was really hoping to have because even if she would have been only given maybe it's 10 years or something, she probably would have done it the same because during the court he did mention that if she would end up leaving the jail after some 10 years, she probably would do this again or again, no matter what happens. Even the judge agreed to him for that part. To that part. And there's only one good thing that came out of all this, and that was in fact Sarah. Because shortly after the court, everything was the final, Jacob actually did start dating Sarah. Because she admitted to him only about 2 weeks after the court was over and the trial was over that she had in fact been in love with him for at least a couple of weeks now. Even when he was in the hospital, she almost believed that she had lost her friend, a dear friend, someone she cared and loved so much. But despite that all, even despite had happened, all the tragic almost attempt of losing his own life, Sarah and Jacob start dating and they were really happy together. But after they finished school together all together, they actually moved into a small house together in the same town, only by like maybe a few streets away from there where they usually lived. But even despite this happened, Jenny, she was still trying to reach out to Jacob, either to her, to him, or even Sarah. Tried to make them try to forgive her what happened. She tried to claim that what she wasn't thinking well, she wasn't in her right mind at the time, but they ignored her. And for that, she tried even again and again. She tried to make an excuse that there was she was suffering from mental disorder or something like that, but she was later proven that that was false. She was fully aware of what she did, and after the final third letter she sent to them, she stopped. And in fact, she never would bother them again. But because during a riot in the jail, she was injured. And she was later passed away from her own injuries because she was the one who caused the fight with another inmate. And for Jacob, though, despite he didn't want to hate Jenny for all that happened, but he's still in his mind and his heart saying, whatever she did to him, he couldn't forgive her, no matter what happened. He would try to forgive her, but he couldn't. Even Jenny, Sarah couldn't even would never be able to forgive Jenny what she did. And after all this, even after that, all this big event, Sarah and Jacob have still been dating together. And just after 5 years after college, though, Jacob took with Sarah to the park where he proposed to her, which she said yes immediately. And only a couple of years later, they actually had their first baby together, a daughter. And despite having later on, a couple of years later, when they had three children together, one son and a daughter, despite this happening, Jacob are still reminded about this terrible event happened because he still has the scars after the stabbing. Even despite that now knowing that Jenny will no longer be able to interfere in his life since she was during the since she died in jail, he can at least feel relieved she will never be able to get out, harming her or harming him or his family. But despite this, he was very sad that he lost that his one of his oldest friends, one of his closest friends, would have ended up like this, right that way, and tried to end his life because he didn't want to be her date for the prom. It was the most strangest thing that she has ever done to anyone, and especially to him. She had been dating other guys before him, and when they broke up, she never acted anything like that to them. So why him? And what Sarah believes that Misha, she may had a crush on Jacob even before she had those other boyfriends, and she was too afraid to even admit her feelings for him Or maybe that she felt maybe that he didn't love her back because who knows? And this is for the reason why Jacob didn't want to forgive her after all that happened. Even though despite some of his friends says that even though she's long gone, he will just try to maybe forgive her, but he admits that he will never do that, but has moved on. He is now happy to be married with Sarah, the dream girl of his life, and especially have a family with her. And knowing knowing that Jenny will never be interfering with his life. And for that, Jacob is grateful. Because long before it happened, she was a cherished friend. She laughed at all his bad jokes. He considered her as almost like a sister. But knowing that's what happened, he wonders what was causing her in her mind to do all these bad things. And especially, why to him? And not even earlier. Or maybe had done something before the prom even started. He wonders though if he had actually had said yes to her invitation to be her date. She may not have been acting like that at any point. But Sarah explained maybe that even despite she might have done something like this, even if he would break up with her in some point later on in some point later on though. And Jacob believes maybe that could have happened. But despite this, the scars after what happened reminds him of this bad day, but also the turning point in his life when he ended up getting married with his true love, Sarah. Even Sarah was still happy that at least Jenny won't be able to interfere with their lives anymore. And for that, she is grateful. And especially to have such great man in her life and to be Jacob and having 3 children with her true love is the best thing she could ever ask for. And this is how Jacob and Sarah found their true love got a family together. The end.